Hello, Hockey World. It is Friday, May 16th, 2014.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Kevin Allen.
I'm Buzz the Dog. And I am Eklund, and you're listening and watching the Hockeybuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com, and it is May 16th, and yet we have more hockey news than you can shake a stick at today for this rogue Friday in May. Yeah, let's start right off the top with obviously the big breaking news that we've got going right now. The Penguins did the obvious thing, kept their coach, got rid of their GM. I gave people 4 options on my blog the other day of things you could do. You could fire the coach, you could fire the coach and the GM, you could get rid of the goalie, or you could change the players. They chose none of those. They just fired the GM. Kevin, why?
It's very confusing. I'm not really sure. There's 2 ways of looking at it. Either they're very sincere and they want the new general manager, to weigh in on the future of Dan Bylsma, thinking perhaps that maybe he's the best option of those around, or they're trying to prevent him from going to the Washington Capitals. Maybe they think he'll go over there and they're looking to get something in compensation. I really have no explanation for it, because it sure seemed clear that they had decided to move in a different direction. We've already seen published reports that said the ownership was in agreement that Dan Bylsma needed to be removed as coach. So, we have, in one sense, we have a little bit of a surprise that Ray Shero has joined the unemployed, because I think there were some people thought that he might survive, but obviously he did not. So, he's out. But here's the interesting. When I was looking at the available candidates for GM, we've almost reached the point where it's not a gorgeous list of candidates. Like, we don't have the guy out there that everybody's got to have. We have a good young assistant general manager in Benning that seems to be the hot candidate, but I wonder if that sort of leans toward the idea that Botterill is going to end up as the new general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins, because if you're going to take an assistant general manager, Botterill is already in Pittsburgh. He's got an MBA, and he's got a player background. He's a pretty good combination. So if you're going to go in that direction, he's probably already ahead of the pack.
Yeah, that would make sense, but the whole thing to me is still, there's no question. As we all said that Bylsma would be very attractive to other teams, Shero has got to be way more attractive even still, right, Mike? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm a little stunned that Shero is the one to have gone and not Bylsma, for the reasons that we've talked about over the last week or so. I think Shero, if he wants to be hired someplace else, is going to probably have his choice of a couple situations. Washington would just sort of jump out as an opportunity, and with the previous, like as you said in your update this morning, Ak, the combination of him and Barry Trotz, going back to Nashville, right. That's sort of a natural going into Washington as a possibility. What I'm, and to Kevin's point, Botterill is definitely a candidate. I know Tom Fitzgerald is another general manager candidate who's been mentioned in a couple other situations, and I know that Bob McKenzie reported this morning that Sidney Crosby's agent, Pat Brisson, is also a possibility. So, there are a number of options here, but again, I'm a little bit stunned that Ron Burkle and Mario Lemieux went in this direction and decided to fire Shero and keep Bylsma, at least for the time being.
Yeah, let's break this down. Kevin, now my source tells me, of course, the one source I talked to this morning told me that there was a chance in his mind that they were not firing Bylsma because there just aren't coaching candidates out there, and they know will get swiped up right away. And so why not give the GM that option? Sort of what you were saying to a degree, but that really is not. I don't think that logic makes any sense to me, because they're not going to be suddenly more coaches available, and if anything, they could lose Trotz now to Washington, right?
Yeah, and he's a great candidate for that job. They've already established that the problem with the team was that they were not really geared toward playoff performances, and you have to hold the coach accountable for that. He was unable to get them to play playoff style hockey. So it seems like they've already crossed that bridge. And there is in my mind, as you mentioned, a ready-made candidate out there, and Barry Trotz, who has a history of making teams better defensively. So I don't understand it. I just, as I said, unless they are really sincere and feel like they owe it to a new GM to let him make that call. But I guess, and the other thing in play here is, David Morehouse is the team president. We've seen that now recently in the last couple of years a change in the layers of management. Does he want to get more involved in the process? That's a question that's worth asking.
It is. It is. We're also joined by Miss Julie Robenheimer. Hello, Jules.
Hello, gentlemen. And
suddenly, Buzz the dog. You basically, you're not needed anymore. Buzz, go. You can go do that podcast with Wisniewski now. Go ahead. He's gonna go. All right. So, Julie.
Yes.
Your thoughts on this massive turn of events? I mean, this is a bizarre one.
Well, I mean, obviously, it's not bizarre. We talked about it a little bit yesterday, and I said basically it's less expensive to fire your management than it is to kind of blow up your team. And, we're kind of seeing the fallout in San Jose with the talk of them not bringing very important players back. And that's just really not an option for a team like Pittsburgh. And, if you are the Pittsburgh Penguins, you're kind of damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. You have to do something. And no matter what you do, the fans really aren't going to like it. But you have to do something. You can't just say, well, let's just keep it going, status quo, because status quo hasn't gotten you where you wanted to go the past couple years. They say that's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. And that's what's been happening in Pittsburgh. They've been following this same model. Yes, it worked once, but it hasn't worked in several years. So something needs to give, and like I said yesterday, it's less expensive to change your management than it is to go out and make wholesale changes on your roster. So it's not really a surprise to me, although I am surprised with the fact that it wasn't both of them, that they kept Bilesma up. But I will say, when you were talking a little bit ago about how there really isn't somebody out there that they would want to bring in, that's 100% true. Like, if you're going to get rid of somebody, bring in somebody that you think is going to do a better job. And as of right now, it looks like of who's available, they don't think there is someone out there that can do a better job with this crew. But then at the same time, maybe it's just a matter of, maybe the new GM, whoever they hire, will actually want Bilesma. And they don't want to, kind of screw that up. So
yeah,
I totally get it, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm just not sold. I mean, here's an interesting thought I wanted to bounce off you, Kevin, too, is the concept of, okay, there's two concepts that work here. One, parity is gotten to such a level where coaches are getting fired at such an incredible rate. That's one, obviously, because you can look at all these Game 7s and that's all you have to look at to see that. But the other is with I would love for somebody to do a study on this. Whenever you have a successful first-year coach like Patrick Waugh, who comes into a city and just turns it around and takes it from something that was one of the worst teams in the league to one of the best, it feels like the next summer all the coaches get fired.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting point, because everybody, especially when one coach does well, they look at that coach and say, look, they can have such a tremendous impact if we just change our coach. It's not going to be okay, but that's the issue with the coach has more impact, obviously, than a general manager on the short run. If you're trying to change your team overnight, the best way to do it is change the coach. I mean, there's history of that. Every time we change coaches, usually the first thing that happens is they give up fewer goals because they just demand everybody play stringent defense, and secondly, players are on their best behavior because they're trying to earn playing time, so they play better than they have all season because they want to continue to play. So on the short term, you always get a good impact by changing the coach. It's in the long run, it's the GM that makes the difference because they change the personnel.
And this is a short-term problem, or it would appear to be. Maybe it's not.
Yeah, it is a short-term problem, but it's also a long-term problem because one of the reasons I think Ray Shero got fired is I'm not sure got likes the contract situation the Penguins now find themselves in, and some of it's not Ray's fault. They got a long-term deal with Chris Letang, who has suffered a stroke. Now, no one could have anticipated that. And they've got $25 million tied up in 3 players.
Right.
That makes it a little difficult for them to maneuver as well. But I would argue I'd rather have that situation than especially when 2 of them are named Malkin and Crosby. So
Not the worst thing in the world.
no, not at all.
And they got Crosby, honestly, for a bargain, really. I mean, they really got Crosby for less than most expected, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. But I still think it's just the normal thing to do would have been to come in and say, we're firing our coach, we're firing our general manager, we're going in a different direction. We need this. We owe it to our fans to make this team more playoff ready. And we're doing that with new people. The assistants are gone, Bylsma's gone. We're getting new people selling concessions. It's all going to be different. They didn't do that. They gave us a curveball, and we don't know what to make of it. So we're sitting around on a podcast trying to get inside their heads.
Yeah, which is all we can do, right, Mike?
Right. I mean, there's some criticism of Shero and the fact that and you noticed from the way the Penguins played in the playoffs that Crosby took a lot of abuse, and there wasn't any players on the roster who could really protect or address that abuse. I don't know how serious or how much of a factor that was. I seriously doubt it was a main factor.
Man. So they're going to get this is the 2 things you get. You get the player friendly and the not player friendly. You get the offensive minded team and the defensive team, and then you get the team of goons and the team that we get rid of all the slow goons because we don't want them to be slow.
Right.
So we're doing all 3 at once here. Is that what we're saying, Mike?
Well, yeah, sort of. But I mean, honestly, if you look at this situation, it is similar in a way to what happened in Toronto, because Toronto did not fire Randy Carlyle because they didn't like the selection out there on the coaching market. If Todd McClellan was out there, if Mike Babcock was out there, I think that maybe Bylsma and Carlyle would have been out of a job if they could have locked up one of those guys. But it just seems like, there's not a guarantee that Bylsma is going to stay. I think you're right. If they bring in a new general manager and he has a candidate that he wants to hire, Bylsma will be gone. But we'll see.
This becomes a major domino now that's sitting out there for all the teams like Florida who are like, will Bylsma be available? I mean, this is really screwing people going into the draft. Just 6 weeks from now or 8 weeks from now, whenever the draft is, Jules.
Well, it's one of those things where, it is. Well, since you mentioned the draft, it is kind of like the draft when you're looking for a potential GM or a potential coach, where you have the option of taking the best that's available. Well, what happens if somebody even better comes along that's available, 2 weeks after you make your decision? So to say that it's really screwing people, I don't really know that that's the case, but you just have to make the best decision for your organization, Like, we all know that Barry Trotz is out there, and we all know that there are a lot of teams interested in his services. We also know there are going to be a lot of teams interested in Bylsma's services should he become available. So you just needed to decide whose basket are you going to put your eggs in. Like, do you want the sure thing and get Trotz? But if your dream coach really is Bylsma, do you want to wait for him and potentially lose out on Trotz? Those are the things that you have to decide internally. But at the same time, I think that those decisions are already made, because honestly, if you're hemming and hawing over, should we wait for Bylsma or should we not? The answer is you should, because that's who you want. Do you really want to settle for your plan B?
Yeah, but if he stays in Pittsburgh, then you're.
I understand that, but then you reassess and you reevaluate. It's just like any other thing, Like, as of right now, if you're hemming and hawing over whether you should hire this coach or if you should wait until somebody else comes along, you really don't want to hire that coach.
No, I get that. You're right about that. Like, if it's like,
It's like when I go shopping.
But
if I'm hemming and hawing over should I buy this dress or should I not, the answer is no, because if I wanted to buy it, I'd take it to the register and pay for it.
That's
Okay,
happened to me so many times.
Right?
Yes. Oh, I know it's happened. I mean, I've been
Shopping
with
advice
Kevin,
with
I've been
Julie
with
will
you
be
in-
on after this podcast.
Well, let's throw one more element into this.
Is it a metaphor?
No, it will have nothing to do with shopping or dresses.
Okay, continue.
Just Mike Babcock's contract runs out at the end of next season, and already, I've heard GMs say, do you maneuver a little bit to get in place to see if you can land him? Because 2 Olympic gold medals, he's won a cup, he's taken a inferior Red Wings team and got it into the playoffs when they had a bunch of newbies. He has a great reputation. So I don't think that played a role in this Pittsburgh situation. But I'm just saying that now is in the back of GM's minds as they try to sort through what they're going to do with their coaches.
It has to be. And Babcock would be, obviously, many consider the best coach in the NHL. So that's a complete, that's like a Crosby coming available. So that opens up to almost any team. Even teams who haven't fired their coach yet would look at that as Babcock. Okay, he's available. But right now we sit with Trotz probably wondering if he can still go to Pittsburgh, and so he's not going to take a job until Pittsburgh gets figured out. We've got teams like Florida, teams like Vancouver who don't even have a GM yet. Teams like Washington sitting back and saying, okay, well we would like Trotz, but he's waiting on Pittsburgh, and we would like Bylsma, but we don't know if he's going to get fired. So yeah, this is close to the draft, considering how an NHL organization works. This is getting pretty scary because those people have to work, if they're going to actually make their team better, have to sit down and figure this out together over the next few weeks. And I don't know if anyone has to. I'm assuming that Pittsburgh is going to, out of respect for Bylsma, that this won't be a long thing. I'm hoping that's the case. Mike, what do you think?
Well, to go back to the Toronto example, it took a month. So I don't know how long. If it is Botterill, and I believe Botterill was named the interim general manager, if he is chosen as the full-time general manager, then I think it would be a pretty quick decision. But it depends on what they decide to do with the GM. They're not going to make any decision on Bylsma until the new GM is in place. And if the candidates are internal, then it should be something fairly quick. If it's somebody like Brisson or somebody else who's on the market who's a general manager candidate, and it's an organization who's still in the playoffs, then they may have to wait. But I would think that the GM situation would be straightened out fairly quickly.
Yeah, and that would figure. Now, Brisson's a really interesting candidate. I want to discuss him for a second. Let's start with you, Kevin. I've heard in the past that Brisson I actually heard from a really good source that he turned down an opportunity to be a general manager before, in Montreal, and said he wasn't ready yet. But I also know from talking to talking to guys like who just like Billy Zito just became an assistant GM. That's a process and a half to go from being an agent to a GM. The NHL really puts you through, you're basically converting to Judaism, is how he described it. You're sitting down and you are saying to them, I am never going to worship my Lord and Savior ever again. And he says to go from becoming an agent to an assistant GM is that crazy. What do you think about Brisson, though? Obviously he's Crosby's agent, which even makes this even crazier still. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not going to touch the religion analogy. I'm not going to do that. But I've known Pat for a long time, and I've talked with him at length about his ambitions and whether or not he would be willing to leave. He has taken himself out of GM races when he's been called. He has a very nice life in Los Angeles.
Right.
And he makes a lot of money. He goes to his kids' hockey practice. He hangs out and plays in the Celebrity Hockey League. He's good friends with Luc Robitaille. There is a GM job that would be very attractive to him, and you can guess where that might be located. But that GM job is not available.
Right.
Saying all that, but in addition to being Crosby's agent, he's also good friends with one Mario Lemieux. It's been talked about before.
Yeah.
I would say, this is my opinion, not anything I got from Pat, but just knowing him as I do, if he had a second team that he might be willing to look at, I think it would be Pittsburgh. And there aren't a lot of agents that can make the quick leap, but we all know it's been done before. And if anybody can do it, it's Pat. Pat has a tremendous reputation around the league, and he has a good working knowledge of the personnel around the league, and he has a good working knowledge of the economics of the league as well. So I don't think anybody would hesitate to give him the job if they thought he was the guy they wanted.
Yeah. And we can't ignore the potential candidacy of Pierre Maguire.
Sure.
We can ignore it for now, but yeah.
I think he has been in the mix. Pierre has as well. He was in Minnesota. He's been involved in the other ones. I'm not sure Pittsburgh would be the right fit now, even though I know he knows Mario. But he and Ray Sherrill were very good friends. So I don't know how that would play out. But Maguire, some people want to dismiss him as a candidate, but he has been a very serious candidate in at least two GM competitions that I'm aware of, and I think more than that. And he has the back. The league likes him a lot, so he gets endorsed by the league.
Yeah, that's true. And another person, Jules, Craig Button, right? There's another possibility.
Yeah, there's a lot of this talk about, we talked about Pierre and how, people, players, whatever, have opinions on him based on what they've seen on TV and, what they've seen in person, with him being on TV. But again, I mean, if you know the game and you know the players and you have a plan of how you want to put a team together, and you find a team that's interested in building a team like that, why not? Make it happen, give it a go. And a lot of people are willing to dismiss these people who are on TV, but at the same time, all these people are on TV for a reason, and that's because they're really good at analyzing talent. And they have all held this position or similar positions in the past. So, if they're what you're looking for, why wouldn't you bring them back?
Something really interesting about it. Go ahead, Kev.
It's almost forgotten that Pierre was the former coach of the Hartford Whalers, and that he was an assistant coach in Pittsburgh when they won the Stanley Cup. That he was Scotty Bowman's, if we can use a religious analogy, apostle. He was one of the chosen few that Scotty surrounded himself, and he thought Pierre was a great guy. He has got very good alliances with some very important people around the league who like him a lot. And I've known him for a long time. I think he's fully equipped to handle being a GM. I'm not saying he'd be a candidate in Pittsburgh. I have no idea, but I'm just saying I know that he's gotten close in other races and other competitions. And I think he would do a good job.
And somebody like John Davidson made the transition from being a television commentator to, being the GM and president in St. Louis, and now that similar position with Columbus. So, there is a precedent. So it's possible.
Remember, TV's different, and of course, this, Julie, being the only one of us who's on TV right now, because I have to mention it once a week at least. But the fact is, TV is different, and these people are, they're good at what they do. They know the NHL, but they're also good at being on TV, and they're putting, like, Pierre Maguire has a thing that Pierre Maguire does on TV. I've talked to him away from that, and that's not the way Pierre Maguire. All right, what's that?
That's not me.
Okay, yeah, I'm assuming it was Kevin. All right, good, we're good.
But I will agree with you there.
Yeah.
And what did I want to say about being on TV before I was distracted by that awesome music? I completely forget. I'll forget.
Buzz,
I'll remember it.
do you have anything to say? Buzz, what are your thoughts on Pierre Maguire? Nothing.
Oh, I know what it is now.
Oh, good. Buzz helps.
The whole thing is that NHL coaches and GMs are their job and their role on the team has expanded to include being a face for the organization and
Right.
being a personality and
Right.
being more than just a coach. Like, there are some coaches where all they want to do is just coach.
Right.
They don't want to talk to the media. They don't want to, do all this stuff. They just want to coach their hockey team. But bringing in these people who are familiar with being, in front of a camera and comfortable in that aspect and have a relationship with other media members could be a huge bonus.
For sure. I do agree. It's not, it's not, he obviously comes on. Now, the thing about Pierre particularly, and we'll get off Pierre after this, is that he is a very polarizing figure in the public eye. Where Craig Button is a guy who I think everybody likes on TV.
I agree.
Now, and I don't, Pierre just is, people just have their opinions. And people have too many opinions, on that kind of stuff too. So, it's all difficult to really say one way or the other, right? But I don't know. I think that this has to happen soon. I'll kind of close off on this topic on this, and we'll go into San Jose, because I do want to talk about that as well. Because yesterday, in San Jose, they came out and they said, okay, we're not bringing back Boyle. We're basically buying out Havlat, and then but the coaches, GMs are staying, right? But we're moving Brent Burns back to defense, which to me, Mike, was the first two. Okay, I get that. You're mentioning things that you're going to do, like that are Boyle's a UFA.
Right.
Just get rid of that right now. That makes sense. Get rid of that question. Because that's going to be a question all summer if not. So get rid of that. Havlat is, he's prime for buyout, so that's fine too. But to talk about, now you're talking about a coaching move essentially. Why, Mike? Why was this brought up yesterday? What's the point of that? That seems like a very strange thing to bring up. It seems like San Jose is desperate to talk about change, and they're actually throwing out there. It's like, oh, we're going to keep a third man high on the power play too. That's what we're going to do as well. So, Mike, your thoughts?
Well, yes, it's projecting a direction and a plan, but I think it's also a reflection of reality when you look at what is going on in terms of the defense market this summer. Again, we've talked about this. Matt Niskanen, maybe Tom Gilbert, and a couple others. It's a very thin defensive pool, unless you're going to go out and make a trade. Guys like Dion Phaneuf might be available, but you have a guy who has been a pretty good NHL defenseman, a pretty good offensive defenseman who has played the point on the power play even when he was moved up to forward in Brent Burns. And he's under contract for a few more years. I think he's making like $5.75 million, something in that range. So it's a simple move to cover the loss of Boyle by moving Burns back. And they have a lot of depth at forward. So internally, they don't have that desperate need to go out and get that big defenseman.
But remember when they moved Burns, Julie, to forward, and it was like this big thing, and it really was like something else. And Kevin, I muted you. You have to unmute yourself up top there. So yeah, I did that, and do you remember this, Julie? You remember that time when that happened? Did we just lose Julie? Sorry.
No, she's there.
Something's all right. Sorry, Julie, your camera's acting funky. You've frozen up on us. So Kevin, while you were gone, I was discussing the concept that I was talking about before the show of okay, we're getting rid of Boyle, we're getting rid of Havlat. We're now going to also move Burns back to defense. We're going to play the third man high on the power play. We're going to dump and chase. That just seems weird to me.
Well, it is, but is that the new way now, where you're placating fans, you're letting them know that you're on top of this? It's replaced sending a letter to season ticket holders.
Yeah.
You just make a formal announcement. We're moving Brent Burns back. It's all sort of geared toward letting the fans know, we got this. We're going to be okay. And obviously, particularly in San Jose, where they've been a disappointing team for the media, for the fans. We've all expected that, and it's not easy to trade the players that we often discuss, Marlowe, Thornton,
right.
No trade clauses, that kind of stuff. So this is a way that you sort of make moves and you send a message that changes in the air without, they're not major moves.
Right. Yeah, and it does. I mean, it does send that message. I thought it was really amusing. In terms of
Yeah.
all that. It really cried out to me of something like, okay, this is because I remember when Burns was moved up to offense. You know, we all remember this. It was a big deal, and they were all proud of it, and it was something that actually worked really well in San Jose.
Yeah. No. Yes, it did. And I mean, that was all part of them trying to get faster too.
Yeah.
You move him up, and that way you can try to get a quicker man on defense, and they did all that. And it was really kind of shocking how they. Here's the thing: like, had they drew a different matchup in the postseason, would they still be alive? I mean, matchups are so crucial, and the parity's reached the point. Like even. I'm going back to Penguins, but I'll try to stay away from this. But if the Penguins added Steve Ott and Brian Boyle, which goalies right now does Bylsma have to be fired? I mean, my point is like they'd be grittier. They'd have that role player, and the goaltender. If Lundqvist was on the Penguins, they may be a Stanley Cup favorite. It's just the parity has reached the point that it's just a few players difference now.
It's the truth. I mean, I don't know. It's that close, and yet these coaches who are really hard to find. A good coach is hard to find, especially when there's so many openings right now. Maybe this is why they're holding on to Bylsma, but at the same time. We got to move off that. That's a vicious circle.
Well, I mean, Claude Julien is a great coach. Maybe the best coach of the East, but the Bruins are out.
Right.
I mean, sometimes it just doesn't matter.
And the Bruins, okay, and yeah, I mean that's something we touched about a little bit yesterday, and I'd like to get your going on too, because that's not like everyone. I mean, it's different than Pittsburgh. Why? I mean, the Bruins were better than Pittsburgh. The Bruins, yeah, they went further last year to the Cup final. They won a Cup 2 years ago. You can go into that. But at the same time, they almost got eliminated last year by Toronto in the playoffs in 7 games. This year they get eliminated by Montreal in 7 games. Mike, this is like this is where the signs. I mean, if they get eliminated last year by Toronto, is Julien gone?
Well, I was just about to say, Claude Julien is one of the best coaches in the league, and it's widely been accepted that if he would have lost that first-round series to Montreal the year they won the Cup, that Claude Julien probably would have been fired.
Oh, yeah.
So, all these coaches are on the precipice of losing their jobs based on one loss or one win. So, I mean, but I think, going back to the San Jose situation, I think some of these teams that are promising change, and I'm talking San Jose and Toronto specifically, who have come out after the season, now San Jose comes out, they say we're going to get rid of Boyle, we're going to buy out Havlat, they probably are going to go looking for a goaltender, they're going to move Brent Burns back to defense. The Leafs come out, they hire Brendan Shanahan, they're promising culture change and all this stuff, and if they do nothing, if San Jose, this is the extent of what San Jose is going to do, if this is it, their fan base is going to be pissed off. And I know in Toronto, if the extent of what they're going to do is, okay, we're going to buy out Tim Gleason and add a depth defenseman, and that's it, the Toronto fan base will explode. They want changes. You cannot promise culture change and not do culture change.
And this is but this is a different city. This is San Jose. It's a different fan base. It's a different group of people. This isn't. I mean, they're willing. I mean, it's amazing how long what's gone. I mean, San Jose, for all their disasters, it hasn't really affected their fan base. I mean, I don't get the sense that it has, at least. I mean, I know people who are San Jose Sharks ticket holders, and they're not giving up their tickets at all. They're billionaires. They work for Google. They love going. They're enjoying themselves. It's not like Toronto where they only have one media person, Kevin, in San Jose, really?
Well, they have more than that, but
okay.
I mean, it does. I mean, I think it does make a difference what market you're in. There's different kinds of pressure. The pressure in Nashville and Carolina, where you got to work to hold on to your fan base, is far different than the pressure that you get in Toronto, where you just have to put up with talk radio. Because the people are going to keep coming to the game no matter what you do. So, But I don't think San Jose. I thought that was just. I viewed it as sort of the first step. It's like Doug Wilson saying to everybody, like, those of you who are sitting on the fence about your season tickets,
Right.
okay, this is my equivalent of the letter to the season ticket holders. But he's always been a guy that tweaks his team and fools around with it. I think we'll see other moves from that from Doug Wilson.
I think that if San Jose beats LA in that series or anybody and then wins the next round, Doug Wilson's a candidate for GM of the year because he made some really good moves.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Yeah, it's a well. I mean, wasn't Ray Shero general manager of the year last year?
That was like what we were talking about. That was what 10 months ago.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's just,
incredible general manager 10 months ago. Now he's not worth a darn.
he's the best in the NHL 10 months ago.
Yeah.
Pat Burns was coach of the year 3 times and got fired 3 times.
Yeah, I mean, it just happens. It does happen.
Well, the coaches who are all left in the final have been fired. Sutter's been fired.
Quenneville
fired. Quenneville's been fired. Yeah, they all have. Yeah. So.
Yep. Well, all we need to know is that it seems like all the coaches that are in the NHL right now at one point or another play for the Hartford Whalers, and we have to. So if we want to really find out where the next coach comes from, we got to trace the lineage of the Hartford Whalers somehow.
Shane Churla, next coach.
Yeah, right. Shane Churla. Yep. I like Skorodensky. Where is he? He's got to be around somewhere. Okay, so Julie, let's get into Montreal, New York, because by the way, I am playing back here a game, and I think it froze on me. Sorry, oh no, here it is.
And how's it going?
I am playing the game back here. I know it's pretty funny.
I love that.
I know you're a big fan of this. You were asking for it yesterday.
I was.
This game is entering the second period right now, and the score I will tell you in a second. It is. Oh, it's 3-1 Anaheim after 1. Wow, we've got a high-scoring battle here. This is unlike any other game we've seen. All right, then we'll get back to that. Below there, by the way, our vintage game of the day is NHL 95. Now, yesterday we had NHL 94 down there from Sega. This is NHL 95. I went to our vintage. You can tell I took a trip to the vintage store the other day for video games and picked up NHL 94 for $1.95 was 75 cents. And then you got this little thing that plays on. So NHL 95, which is not the NHL from Swingers, that was NHL 94. And as Mike points out, Buzz is fast asleep.
I told you he was going to fall asleep today. Did I not say that?
Yes, you did.
He fell asleep playing NHL 95, as you can tell. Like he's leaning up against the thing there. I can get him.
No, let him sleep.
Leave him be. Leave him be.
Buzz.
I did not know this was Bring Your Dog to Work Day. Or
we're gonna do that. We'll get you. We'll do that for sure.
See, I woke him up. Now, come on.
He's subtly awake. Anyway, all right. So let's move on to Montreal. Now he's just leaving. This dog is hilarious.
Have we insulted him?
Yeah, he's sleeping on a Colorado Rockies jersey over there, which is like one of his favorite things to do, believe it or not. So I don't know. That's Buzz.
All right, Montreal, New York. Let's
Montreal, New York. Thanks, Jules, for bringing us back. Okay, so this series, during the year, these teams played 3 times and scored a grand total of combined 4 goals. All these games ended in shutouts for one side or the other. Montreal winning 2-0, and the Rangers winning 1-0, and Montreal winning 1-0 in overtime. So we're not looking at a high-scoring battle here.
Burner.
I mean, at least that's what the regular season would say. And I'm a big matchups person like you are, Kevin. So what do you think, Kev? Where are you going with this?
Yeah, this is a tough one. This is a tough read series because I believe in the magic of Lundqvist, but I think Montreal's going to win this series. I took them. Just a feeling that I have that I just think Montreal has more things going for it right now, and I'm not seeing enough out of the top 6 from the Rangers, and I don't know that they're suddenly going to find the magic. I find it just amazing that Rick Nash has over 60 shots on goal and has got no goals. Like, the man has no puck luck whatsoever.
There's no luck at all.
No.
I completely agree. Julie, what are your thoughts here?
Well, I had the conversation the other day with someone about the emotional letdown for the New York Rangers. Because, obviously, we talked about it on this podcast, that one of the catalysts and big forces of change in regards to how the Rangers were playing was, unfortunately, the passing of Martin St. Louis' mother. And it was kind of like, let's get through it, let's win the series. And now that they've won the series, it's kind of like this emotional letdown, especially since they've had a couple days to kind of take a breath and relax, and it's not go, 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 like they had been for almost an entire month from the end of the regular season.
Right.
So, that said, it's still going to be incredibly emotional, only because they're playing Montreal in Montreal, and they're actually able to attend St. Louis' mother's funeral as a team.
Holy cow.
Which, to me, is going to be another game changer, because they are literally going to go through that process with Marty and be there to support him as a team. And to me, that is really going to propel them in this series, because they're going to understand, kind of the magnitude of playing for each other, and they experienced how they can be successful with it in this past round, the past couple games. But, they're going to be able to continue it. It's not going to be this emotional letdown, because they're going to play game one, and then they're going to have the funeral on Sunday, and then they're going to likely play game two on Monday and or Tuesday.
Holy cow.
So, well, not and. They'll play Monday or Tuesday. And
could be a long game.
They'll still have that, So I was ready to buy into the fact that they might have this emotional letdown and kind of go back to being that same tired team. But when you have the rest of a couple days off that they desperately needed just to kind of get away from the rink and take a break, that they were able to do yesterday. I'm sure, they had to skate this morning and headed up to Montreal tonight. But then to have this, big event that they're going to come together, they're going to bond.
Yeah.
There's just no question about it. So whether they win or lose game one, game two will be incredibly intense for them, and could be a big, swing in regards to their effort and the level of passion that they play with. Right. So it'll be really interesting to see how they respond, because it, obviously it can go one of two ways, but with all of these additional factors coming in, I think, I said it before, that if the Rangers go on and win the Stanley Cup, the best thing that ever happened to them in the most tragic way possible is the passing of St. Louis' mother.
The team came together. I mean, it's the truth. Well, this is kind of two teams of destiny, Mike. How I see it, and that's what they both feel like too, which is weird when destiny collides. Because well, going back, since dropping the first game to the to the Rangers in April of 2014. I'm sorry. What? No, I'm wrong. I'm going the wrong way here. I apologize. I had this really good gag picked up, and I screwed it up. Anyway, my point of this is the Rangers won the first time these teams played on November 27th, 1926. But since then, the Canadians have won 402 games, and the Rangers have won 217 games, so almost doubling the Rangers. And they've tied 95 times back when tying was the thing. So, yeah, Mike, I know you're a Canadians fan. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, based on those statistics, the Rangers should just go home. No, honestly, I think the emotional drop is going to be probable on the Montreal side, because when you have you were facing your greatest rival right now in the Boston Bruins. You beat them in 7 games. You walked into the TD Garden and you ripped out their throat and you beat them. And I think it would be unnatural for them not to have some sort of emotional letdown playing the Rangers. I don't think they have the vitriol and animosity against the Rangers than they did the Bruins. Now, that being said, the goal is obviously to win the Stanley Cup, so they'll be motivated for that. But I think
at this point, can you have an emotional drop-off? Really? I mean, you're.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, I do agree with Julie that there will be some residual effect of the team bonding with the Rangers because of the situation with Marty St. Louis. But I don't know how much that's going to factor into things if Rick Nash, if Derek Stepan can't step up.
Don't score. Yeah.
Yeah, don't score. I mean,
I'm with you there.
how many times can Brian Boyle and Dominic Moore carry the offensive load for that team? The one consideration that Henrik Lundqvist has never played well in the Bell Center. Tuukka Rask in the Boston series, that was also a factor. I think he had won. I think the game 4 that he won there, the 1-0 game, was the first time he'd won in the Bell Center. The Bell Center is a tough place to play. Lundqvist has never played well there, so that would be a factor. But I tend to think that the Rangers are going to eventually win this series, but I think it'll be long and drawn out. So I think it'll go 6 games and the Rangers will win.
But he has won 12 of the last 13 when he's gotten a haircut and eaten a ham sandwich. So there's that. My wife loves these stats.
Did you take your funny pills today, Eck? Because you're throwing out a lot of really stupid jokes, but they're actually kind of funny.
Well, I want to kind of thank you for that, Jules.
It's the best backhanded compliment I've heard in a while.
Oh, man.
Kind of funny. Well, I think we should leave on that. Enjoy the game tonight, guys.
Do we want to make
the game is out of reach? The Ducks are just running away with this one at this point. 8-3. 8-3 in the third period, which is weird because these simulations have been very, very good until now, and apparently, Jonathan Quick has just lost his mind.
Hey, maybe they are still really good. You do not know.
We don't know yet.
You do not predict the future.
We will find out. If it's 8-3 tonight in the third period, you all are buying me a drink.
Sure.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. I'll think about it.
All right, guys. Remember, without the buzz,
It's just hockey.
talk to you soon.